Hey guys, Kinch here, and today I'm going to be taking a look at the Wretch, which is a unique belt released in the Talisman League. Now, because this belt is league specific, it comes with a pretty hefty price tag, so I wanted to check it out and see if it's worth the cost. In this video, we'll take a look at exactly how it works, and then talk about what builds and stats best scale the belt. So, in order to fully understand how to use the Retch, we have to have a solid understanding of how Life Leech works, as it's a major function of the belt. So I'm going to take a minute to explain how non-Vaal Pact Leech works. If you already have a perfect understanding of how Leech rates work, click this box to skip ahead to my analysis of the Retch, and pat yourself on the back for being such a smart boy while the video loads. Alright, so we're here in raid class. Let's start off by just going through the character select real quick. We could play a Nagahama's character, or let's play a Cosby's Discharger here, yeah. So, we've got our character, and we've got an enemy here on the screen. So, anytime we hit the enemy with a skill and we have any amount of life leech, a leech instance is created on our character that gives us life back. And if you hit multiple times, you get multiple instances of leech. Now it's not quite this simple. I've devised a little bit of a metaphor to help me kind of understand how leech works and how to best scale it and what the scaling stats do. So let's break this down a little bit more. So the amount that you leech back is based on the size of the hit. So for this example, let's just say we've got one bigger hit that we did and a few little ones over here that we're adding up. For the sake of this video, I won't get into too much about how the duration of leech works, but just know that it's based off of your character life and the damage dealt. So these hits are all giving us life back all at the same time. Now there's two main stats that you can use if you're not using Vaal Pact to scale your leech. The first is increased life leech per second, and the second is maximum life leech per second. So the best way to think about increased life leech per second is kind of thinking of like a nozzle or a faucet hose. So it doesn't change the duration of the leech at all, but it increases the amount that's healed in that duration. So it's kind of like turning the faucet up. More leech is going to come through, or more blood, whatever life is coming through to your character faster. The thing about that is it doesn't all just go directly to your character. It's all kind of funneled through maximum life leech per second. So let's say, for example, you just did a few hits, like in this diagram here. You're just getting a little bit of leech back. It's possible that you don't really interact with this maximum leech per second stat. But what happens as you start to leech more life, the amount that you're leeching increases, is you'll start to hit a cap. You can think of this funnel as starting to fill up with blood, and eventually you're going to get bottlenecked by the maximum life leech per second, which at its base is 20% of your maximum life per second. So if you're going to scale life leech per second, there's a lot of places in the game to get this stat. It's somewhat common. There's even some really high numbers on like pieces of armor where you can get like 100%, right? But the thing is, it doesn't really matter how high you scale this if you're always going to be bottlenecked by your maximum life leech per second. Because eventually, you'll just be hitting this life leech cap faster, and it won't really be helping you all. So increased life leech is kind of common, and for good reason. The sources for maximum life leech are a lot more scarce. There's basically 13% from the tree, 5% from Vitality Void, which is actually a pretty good node, and you might be taking the characters anyways. Then Hematophagy, Hema, the bloody one, is bad. And most people probably wouldn't be traveling here. It involves a couple of travel points you probably wouldn't be taking. So you could almost think of mostly just if there's 5% on the tree, and then the Slayer Ascendancy also gives you 10%. So the reason this is cool from a design perspective is that it allows GGG to control how powerful Leech is and adjust other aspects of the game accordingly, for example, boss damage. You could try to scale your life pool to get this base 20% region to be more significant, but people kind of already do that anyway, and there are drawbacks. It's kind of what the skill tree is based around in the first place, damage versus life. The problems, or lack of problems if you're the player, arise when you take the node Vaal Pact. This is a fucked up node for so many reasons. To say that it just removes the funnel isn't even really enough, as this would imply there's still some kind of leech rate going on. With Vaal Pact, you just become the leech. Like, look at this fucking maniac. He's just jamming this leech into his heart. Anyway, now GGG has no control over leech because it's dependent on how much damage we can do, which is way more varied and difficult to predict than player life pools. It's much easier to abuse because you don't even need that much life leech on your character, as 2% of a million is still a massive amount of life to be receiving back instantaneously. So, now that we understand leech, let's take a look at the Retch. There are a few standout stats. 60% increased flask effect duration is amazing. 20% is the max roll for a rare, so you're getting triple the amount here. This stat is counterbalanced by having 30% reduced flask charges gained while using the flask. With the clear speed meta and the fact that surgeons took a nerf recently, I still see this as an overwhelming positive for the belt. Especially for things like Vinkdars where you might only use it once on a boss, having an almost 7-second duration feels good, man. The belt also comes with 15% move speed while flasking. Is that good? I think it's good. And finally, the main reason to equip the belt in the first place, 200% of Life Leech applies to enemies as chaos damage. So the way this works is, and I'm going to begin quoting the wiki, the Wretch takes 200% of the actual life gain from your leech and deals it as chaos damage to the enemy that was the target of the leeching. Therefore, by default, no damage is dealt if the player is at full health while leeching. If Vaal Pact is allocated, then the chaos damage is dealt instantly rather than over time. Another thing to keep in mind is that this damage is considered reflected damage, and is not affected by any damage modifiers. Sorry, double dippers. So right off the bat, we see that we have to be missing life to deal additional damage with the Retch. This isn't ideal, especially in a meta as fast as this one, where monsters might not appear on your screen long enough to finish their swing animation. But there's one class that can change this drawback, and that's the Slayer. If Endless Hunger is allocated, then the damage will continue as long as the leech lasts, even once at full life. If combined with Vaal Pact, the total amount of potential leech is dealt instantly, including that above the player's maximum life. So with Slayer, you basically get full value from the Retch all the time. This makes the Retch almost exclusively a Slayer belt in my opinion. Honorable mention does go to the Berserker, who can attain 100% life leech through Ascendancy points. It's just that you'll only be dealing damage for brief moments and in smaller amounts than the Slayer. So now that we've got no limit to the amount of damage the Retch can do, you can basically think of 1% life leech as 3% more damage. So where's the best place to get massive amounts of leech? You know it, I know it, everybody knows it, Vessel of Vigdar. There's even a lightning conversion form of this flask in case you're a pure fizz build. If all of your damage is lightning damage, then the Retch on a Slayer is basically worth 60% more damage. 78% if you've got the Witch Flask effect nodes. That is a colossal amount of damage to be getting from a belt. Let's just say we were running another 5% leech from the tree and gear, the Retch is now giving us 93% more damage. Now you start to see why this thing is so expensive. Another bonus is the damage is chaos damage, so if a monster is lightning resistant, the chaos most likely does a better job of getting through. So what's the best build for this belt? I might not be a great person to ask. My original idea was to use Blade Flurry to cast when channeling Discharge, and I could use High on Sphere, so my Blade Flurry was dealing pure lightning damage, Ramirez for Power Charge on hit, Vols for Endurance, ooh, throw in the Red Trail for Frenzy Charge on hit too. This is the point where your build is trying to do too much. If you find yourself here, pop a few regret orbs and walk away. If you're looking for a solid Retch build with high-end gear, I suggest you check out the Endless Retch build by YouTuber CheckPlaid. I'll link his vid in the description. I wanted to try to do something to show off the power of the Retch without using other OP items such as Disfavor or Hand of Wisdom in action, so people could see the boost it gives. I settled on using the Brain Rattler, and the footage you're seeing here is mostly of a 5-linked version of a level 83 to 85 Slayer with some underleveled gems. But it performs okay. I was able to take it into red maps alright. I'll link the build I used in the description for reference, but it's not great. I wouldn't recommend playing it. I thought about respecking the character for a third time, but when you start saying things like, I should have been using lightning tendrils all along, it's best to just quit while you're ahead. I think the major things holding the Retch back at this point are the fact that lightning damage doesn't double dip, but is the easiest source of high life leech from Vinkdars, and the fact that the Slayer makes the best use of it, but is the farthest starting point from the CI meta that's all the rage. If double dipping is removed and CI is nerfed, the belt will be much more meaningful. But we're as likely to see Vinkdars and Vaal Pact nerfs in the future too, so keep that in mind. Overall, if you're a Slayer, this belt is totally worth the price tag. Outside of that, I probably wouldn't bother. Thanks for watching. Feel free to ask questions in the comments, and if you want, you can find me streaming at Kinch45.